Hey guys, what's up? It's Yana. Welcome to day 6 of Camp NaNoWriMo July 2023. I want to focus really on writing today, so no vlog, just a topic for discussion and for a little chat right now. And the topic is sex scenes. Do you write them? Do you not write them? Do you kind of imply them but not really describe them fully? Or do you kind of describe them but in a very vague way? Or do you just go all in and just all the details and everybody's body parts just going places and everything? Now, I'm at a point in my fantasy romance where I'm trying to decide whether I want to include a sex scene or not. And the reason that can be an important decision is because obviously, number one, it's going to change the rating of the entire story. So if I do have a sex scene that is actually described in it as opposed to only mentioned or implied, that would push it towards an older audience. And I'm not entirely sure whether I want to do that or not. And that can be a very difficult question to answer because the feel of the story is a little bit more young adult, I suppose, but the characters in it are a little bit older. They're over 20 years old for the majority of the story. They meet a little bit earlier, but they are now over 20. And so while technically this wouldn't be classified as young adult, I feel like a lot of the audience for it would be younger teens. So then that would suggest that a description of a sex scene wouldn't really be appropriate there. But at the same time, there's a very large audience that reads young adult but is older. Those would be the Sarah J. Maas fans and a lot of other authors fans who are just out of their teens, but they enjoy the feel of young adult, but they also want a little bit of spice in their story. And actually a lot of the time that's a big reason why they're even reading the story, especially with later Sarah J. Maas books, which have really kind of veered very much away from kind of the subtle and more innocent sex scenes into incredibly graphic sex scenes, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you like, that's what you like, but it's definitely a slightly different crowd that you're aiming that towards, and a slightly different feel to the story as well. And I don't really know yet where I want this story to fall. I don't have an issue with sex scenes. I don't mind reading them, especially if they're well written. If they're not well written, they're hilarious. So I also enjoy reading them and commenting on them with friends. In terms of writing them, I do write them sometimes, not very often, just because I don't often feel like there's a need for them. Like, why is that there? Apart from the reason of just sex sells. And it does, but sometimes if you're writing a really good story and you're just putting sex scenes in there because you know that readers like them and want to have them, it can actually interrupt the flow. It can change the mood. It can take you out of the story a little bit. And I know because it's happened to me where I'm just reading something and it's really well written, it's really interesting, and suddenly there's a sex scene. And the sex scene is not even necessarily terrible, it just feels like it doesn't fit. Not to mention, in fantasy, fantasy is a genre that's very often kind of sat a little bit in the past, and in what I'm writing, it's kind of an interesting world because there are places in it which are very much in the past because they have a lot of magic and technology doesn't work there. And there are places in it that are very technologically advanced. So in terms of how people speak and how they behave, it's somewhere in between a modern day setting and like a more I guess Victorian or whatever you want to imagine setting. So finding the right language to even talk about sex and describe sex for these people, for these characters, presents a bit of a challenge, because there are certain words that you would use in like say a modern day rom-com, that if you use the same things in fantasy romance, it just really just takes you out. Especially there are certain euphemisms for body parts. I mean, I am personally an advocate for never calling a body part anything ever. Never calling a, not never calling a body part ever. This is my hand, I call it hand. But what I mean is, sexual organs shouldn't really have nouns that on the page that they're replaced with, because it's almost inevitably funny. Well, when I say never say never. It does depend on the sex scene, but most of the time, calling somebody's manhood, or you know, during a sex scene, it just, it's, let's say it's 93% likely to just make me giggle, and from there onwards I find it more difficult to take the scene seriously. There are ways to write without silly euphemisms, but obviously that's difficult, and you know, the question is, can I do that well or can I not? I've seen it done, but that's usually when you are describing sex, but you're doing it, even if you're describing the full scene, you're not really getting into the detail of what is physically happening. You're focusing a little bit more on metaphors, or you're focusing a little bit more on what the characters are thinking and feeling, or even what they're saying if they are talking to each other during the scene. And I think that is, if I do end up deciding to write any sex into this book, that's probably where we're going to be with that, because I think I could probably do that better. Yeah, so this is one of the things that I'm going to be working on today. Probably won't be really done by tomorrow, or a decision won't be made by tomorrow. I mean, I suppose I can always write that part and then take it out again if it doesn't fit. Once I finish the entire book, once I know what the tone of the whole thing is, and I can run through it and see whether that should be there or not. But for now, that's where my mind is, and this is what I'm trying to figure out. So I'm going to do that today. I'm also going to work on, obviously, my other projects and client stuff and all that. And I will check back tomorrow so that I can really focus today. Thanks for watching if you watched this video, and I will see you in the next one. And obviously, if you have any thoughts on this topic, you can discuss that in the comments or not, or you can just think about it anyway. Thanks again, and see you next time. Bye.